Let's just start with football because that's what we're going to hit next week. But I also want to talk to you about Will Wade and company, and then we'll make fun of the notion that Duke is disrespected. Why do I get the sense this feels big year-ish for me and NC State, given the schedule, given a returning quarterback in C.J. Bailey? What is the big picture view of this season for you?
Yeah, big year. It depends on how you want to quantify that. Like, do we want to say it's a big year in terms of they should have success, or it's a big year in terms of it's a really important year because you're coming off of what took place last year. You're coming off of a 6-7 season where a lot of people had high expectations last season. This feels like it feels like a, I don't want to say the term here because it's, we'll say poop or get off the pot type of year for Dave Doeren. We'll just say that.
I think it kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's an important year. That's what I'll say because going into this year, you have all the pieces that you need from the offensive side of the football. The big question mark is going to be how much of a step does the defense take? I think they've got some good players. They added a lot of quantity back in the spring. Now, how much quality is going to be the big question mark, and we'll find that out throughout fall camp. And I don't think that's going to be something that we're going to have answered until probably week 2 or 3 of the season to figure out, hey, how does this defense look against a team like ECU? How does this defense look against Virginia? And then, what will they look like once they go against Duke, once they go against, Notre Dame midway through the season? So I don't think it's going to be something that we know from that side of the football until midway through the season, really.
Cory Smith from Pack Pride is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I went through the schedule, and you can just break it up into non-conference, conference games away from home, conference games at home. There's not a lot of beat yourself over the head for NC State. There's no Clemson. There's no SMU. There's no Louisville. Now, there is Georgia Tech, and I think Georgia Tech is going to be good. I think Duke is going to be good. I have no idea what Florida State's going to be like. There is Miami. I think Pitt's probably pretty good, and Pitt away from home isn't going to be easy. But I think they avoided, it certainly isn't one of those schedules that you go, oh my gosh, how are they going to negotiate this?
Yeah, I think, the way we've kind of broken it up and we've discussed it a couple times is, and I say we as in like Michael Clark and I over at Pack Pride, taking a look at really just the first half and the back half of the schedule, because that first half for NC State, those first 6 games, you've got ECU, Virginia, both at home. You go to Wake Forest, which, has been a house of horrors for NC State in years past, but they have won a couple games in the last few times they've gone to Wake Forest, and it's not expected to be a good Wake Forest team. So that should be manageable. It's a short week, but then you get time to rest up before going to Duke, which, we don't know exactly what Duke's going to look like. We know that they should have a good offense, but, how is the defense going to shake out this upcoming season? Right. I think if you're able to find a way to win, 5 out of those first 6 games, because you have Virginia Tech and Campbell at home, those are the last 2, you set yourself up for a really good year, potentially, or at least, a 7-8 win season, with the back half of the schedule being at Notre Dame, at Pitt, at Miami. And then, like you said, we don't know what to expect necessarily from Georgia Tech, Florida State, or UNC. All those games happen to be at home, but those are all kind of toss-up games as you go into the season. So you have to find a way to win at minimum 4 of those first 6 games, and it can't come against ECU. That's the biggest point here. You can't lose back-to-back games against ECU and not have questions after week 1 for Dave Doeren.
Oh my gosh. I just want to say this right now. I'm not saying that I don't want the Pirates to win. It's not about this. Forget about rooting. But if the Pirates win, I'm taking PTO Monday. I'm not going to be here that day. And it's more about, I do think that there is pressure to not only win that game, but to be convincing in doing it, because you alluded to it, like there is a bit of a, it's kind of time We've been here a long time. I love the program. I think Dave Doeren has built a really strong program at State. It's time to start stacking a lot of wins in this. Yeah. With all of the success of the program in general, it just hasn't won enough games. They have to win that one, right?
Yeah, again, I think that is a must-win situation going into the season. I think that's a given. The question mark then becomes, are you able to continue reaching the plateau of NC State, which has been, right around 8 wins for Dave Doeren, which is a very consistent football program.
There's nothing wrong with that.
The thing is, you haven't had a single breakthrough year. You haven't had a single time where you've gone to the ACC championship, even gone to the ACC championship game. And, obviously, a lot of people use the Atlantic Division as a reason for NC State for several years, but you had a chance in 2020 when there wasn't a division. You had a chance last year when there wasn't a division, and they've missed the mark in every one of those seasons. So now the question mark becomes, obviously you have to win those very winnable games early on in the season and definitely win against ECU. I'm not going to say it's a very winnable game, but, Virginia at home, Campbell at home, those are very winnable games for NC State. You have to be able to add on a win against ECU before, if you miss the mark on that game, then yes, like I said, immediate questions begin for Dave Doeren, and you can probably you might be able to take a PTO day on Monday because you can just put live calls on all during your entire session and fill up 3 hours.
Just go. Cory Smith from Pack Pride is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. What was your view of CJ last year as a quarterback? I know there was not the intent for him to play, but circumstance happened, and he did. I liked a lot of what I saw. Obviously, there needs to be a lot more consistency and whatnot, but what was your view of him, and what are the expectations going into this year?
I think it was definitely better than being in the back half of the ACC quarterbacks, which is where a couple of people put. I think one place put him at like 15th out of 17 quarterbacks, which is way beyond comprehensive for me. But I definitely think he put himself in that discussion to be one of the top quarterbacks coming into this year based off of what he did in the back half of the season. Sure, he made his mistakes. You think back to that Georgia Tech game, like he has 3 rushing touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions in that game. So he looked like a freshman at times. But I think the maturity that he showed and the growth that he showed, especially in the back half of the season, lets you know, hey, he's a guy that can lead this team going into next year. And the biggest question was, does he have the pieces around him? They were able to keep a lot of those pieces, like Hollywood Smothers, like Justin Jolie, like Noah Rogers. You obviously lose Casey Concepcion, but he was a guy that it felt like was kind of forced a lot last season as opposed to being the guy for this team. So, what I really liked about CJ Bailey down the stretch last season was showing the growth as a pocket passer, but also being willing to roll out and being a guy that you can trust. I think they're probably going to put a little bit more emphasis on, hey, stay in the pocket for us, and we'll try to protect you because you cannot run the risk of losing him this season. You have a redshirt sophomore behind him in Lex Thomas that has never been in a big down situation, and then a true freshman, Will Wilson, behind him, and that is not a recipe for success for this upcoming season.
Cory Smith from Pack Pride is joining us here at Cory R. Smith on Twitter. All right, let me move this over to basketball and Will Wade and the work that they have done to remake basically the entire roster. There's a couple of holdovers and good players, but are you surprised at all at how dramatic the makeover has been?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing was going to be the buy-in from the NC State fans, and I don't think Will Wade was coming without that. You saw even more buy-in by the time they got to the end of this thing where you're able to, they had to go back to donors and make sure they had the funds to go get a guy like Vin Allen Lubin. They had to make sure they had the funds to go get a guy like Darian Williams, and that worked out well for NC State. Those are 2 late additions that other teams down the stretch quite simply couldn't afford. And I think that's the selling point for NC State this season is like, hey, we were able to go out and go get the types of players you wanted with the funds that you gave. Now it's going to be coming down to winning. But getting a guy like Darian Williams, I mean, the only guy in the ACC that was a top 10 transfer portal player in the 24/7 Sports rankings. He's a guy that you've heard. I think it was a couple weeks ago, John Rothstein saying like he's potential ACC Player of the Year preseason type guy, and he has a chance to truly do that because of how much versatility he has in the system. He can play 3 through 5. I don't know that you would put him in the 5 a ton, right. But if you're playing a small ball lineup, he can play that. He's a great rebounder. He's somebody that can be used in a multitude of ways in the system. So I do think just that crown jewel at the very end, and then having the high upside guys, having an experienced guy like Trey Holloman that comes in after making multiple Elite Eights. You have a guy like Venal Lubin that comes in to play some of the 4, some of the 5 for this team. They're still looking probably, potentially, we'll see if they get somebody that they can add to the roster that's another 5. But then you also get, a really high upside guys like Jerry Ding that comes over from Florida State, high upside guy like Terrence Arsenault that comes over from a team that just missed out on winning a national championship last year. You're getting a ton of proven winners and guys that can contribute and play roles. Now they're coming in looking to up those roles and truly be able to add to what NC State's trying to do, which is being, they would love to have a double bye going into the ACC tournament. So that's really the goal going into this year.
Well, Will Wade guaranteed it, right, when he got hired. Here's the thing about it. When you see guys who are coming in who played in, regional finals, Sweet 16s, as we're seeing for other schools coming here, it does say something about the head coach. Like, I think he was feeling it a little bit on the rubber chicken circuit when he said those things about Venal and Lubin and UNC. They were too dumb to play him. I think he's a good player. I think if you're really good, I think he's a reserve. So if he's averaging 15 and 8, I think we have an issue. But that's just my opinion of Venal and Lubin. The coach certainly knows what he's talking about. He seems to me to be an incredible personality fit for NC State, to the point where, like, I had great respect for what he did as a coach, but he's the anti-Herb Sendek when it comes to being able to relate to your fan base in an entertaining way.
Yeah, and I would add, he's added another element that you didn't get from the 2 previous coaches too. Obviously Kevin Keats was, a pretty open coach, and he was willing to kind of talk about all the things, but he wasn't as outlandish and didn't make headlines in that sense. Mark Gottfried, he didn't come without his qualms, but at the same time, he was completely different in the locker room than he was coming out to the press conference. And, he would say some outlandish things as well, but, we've already seen with Will Wade, like, I love Craig Hamill to death, the SID for NC State. But we're asking him about scheduling questions, and he's already like, I don't know why we haven't released a schedule. Like, here's some schedules, here's some dates that you guys don't know about yet. What do you know about? I'll tell you, if we've got it finalized. And Craig was just kind of like, all right, man, like we haven't released those things yet. Like, don't do that. But I just get the feeling he's a lot more of an open book when it comes to those things, and it's not just a, hey, I'm more willing to give you things that the SIDs and things like that aren't. He's saying, hey man, look, ask me questions and I'll give you everything that I know at this point. So that's all you can ask for as a media personality, but also as a fan, that you're going to get everything that he knows, and he'll put it all out there for you.
And I also think it was cool that he gave Kevin Keats his flowers. He's like, I think he did a good job at NC State. Obviously, if he did a really good job, then Will Wade wouldn't be here. But the truth of the matter is that I don't disagree with what Will Wade said. It just for whatever reason didn't work out. But look, I think Will is going to be a tremendous fit here. If Duke's got a chip on their shoulder, though, Cory, because nobody's talking about Duke basketball in July, a month away from the start of the football season, because we're not talking about anybody's bad. We're talking about Will Wade because of the roster. right? And the makeover. But if it was a normal offseason, would we be talking about any college basketball team right now? I just found the whole thing funny. I know you did.
Yeah, I did. I mean, and obviously, there's the fact that I talked about John Rothstein earlier. Like he's had, coaches on, and he hasn't had John Shire on yet. But a lot of the coaches he's had on are new coaches at different places, or teams that you didn't talk about last season that went out and got great portal hauls and are, the talk of the offseason because of what they did. That's not what Duke does. Duke doesn't add a ton through the transfer portal. So we're not still talking about the Boozer twins because those are talked out at this point. Once we get closer to the season, you'll talk about those guys. So I don't necessarily agree with, I think it was Cameron Boozer that said it. Sure. I saw a joke yesterday that, you remember how you put the bags of chips in the microwave and it like shrinks them really tiny.
Okay.
And you put them on keychains and things like that. Like that's probably the size of the chip that's on Duke's shoulder right now. Like there's no real chip on their shoulder. No. You know what you are going into the season. You know what the expectations are. They're a team that's disappointed they made the Final Four and didn't make the national championship game last year and didn't make the Final Four the previous year. That's a much different chip than teams that are being actually overlooked going into the season. But it's, look, if you're going to find motivation, Dabo Swinney's been able to find it for years. If Duke's able to find it, not being talked about in June and July, sure, go ahead.
Unbelievable. All right, man, I'll see you down in Charlotte next week. I appreciate your time, Cory.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it, Adam.
You got it. Cory Smith, Pack Pride here on the Adam Gold Show. Cory R. Smith on Twitter. All right.